All right, we're live. Surprise! Nothing better to do on a Friday night than sit here and make comics. I've got my coffee. I've got my water bottle. 100% chance I will have to take a bathroom break in the middle of coloring this page, but we'll see how I don't know. I don't know how much we can do today. Or tonight, I should say. What time is it? It's like, so it's 10 o'clock. I actually started on time. That's nice. I might try to finish this page tonight. We'll see. It's a lot, but I kind of feel like I kind of want to try to knock it out. We'll see. It hath begun. Oh, my cat's name? My cat's name is Tootie. Tootie. Yeah, and if you like the music, that was the Bad Ink soundtrack, which the link is below. It's Bandcamp Friday for those of you who actually follow or use Bandcamp. Basically, on certain Fridays, Bandcamp does this really cool thing where they let artists keep 100% of the proceeds of all sales. Like, they don't take a cut. So I think you have like a couple more hours to do that. And I put up every Bad Ink soundtrack. You can buy the discography for $1.50. So it's 3 albums. I think it's like 50 minutes of music. So it's like an LP length with a 3-issue soundtrack. So there you go. Check it out. But yeah, so basically what we're coloring is the companion to what I was working on last time. So this is page 10 over here on the right, and this is page 10 on the right. This is page 16, so these are not concurrent, but we keep in the story returning back to this scene. So there's like this is what I talk about when I talk about like batch processing comic pages as a colorist. Is you batch together the stuff that's the same. So just like a movie, there's set pieces that you return to at various points in the story. I tend to like to color them together so that there's a consistent look. No matter what part of the book we're in, if we go back to that place, I want it to look the same. The way to get consistency is to try to stay in a mindset. It's easier to stay in a mindset and color if you can do it all together in a similar time window. So here we are. So I'm trying to finish I think this is there's another page, like another 6 pages later, that is in the same place. So this is it's like a trilogy of pages where she keeps waking up in her hotel room, and like increasingly more distraught, basically, as there's like more and more chili men invading. So that's fun. The difference is that this scene, we can actually, this will be fun. So when I colored, let me zoom in. When I colored this panel on the top right of the screen, it's sort of like a semi-daytime thing. Oh, you know what? Damn, I got to turn off all the dots because it's going to get that moire effect or whatever. Hang on. So probably right now on the stream, it's got that weird like halftone like fuzz when you like moire. So let me turn everything off. Because it's so annoying to stream and then watch the footage back and realize that like I can't use any of it because it's like between the compression and the like. But between the compression and the zooming out on halftone dots, it looks like complete garbage. And I've like watched back footage from a stream and been like, oh my God, I can't use any of this. Like, it looks so weird. So now I actually know that you're supposed to turn off the halftones before you start. Yeah, there you go. That probably looks better. So for the purposes of the stream, I'll just turn all those layers off. But I do have like all kinds of cool manga shading halftones on top. Okay, so this panel over here on the top right is obviously it's the same hotel room as what's over here on the left. I'm going to do different times a day though. which will be pretty cool. Like on the right, it's almost like she woke up. Maybe she like slept in. She woke up at like 11 a.m. I don't know. It's like there's day outside. Whereas this one, she wakes up in the middle of the night. And you can even see from the way Lydia was doing the cityscape, just the line art sort of starts to suggest night. There's like a little bit heavier shadows. There's more definition on the windows in the line art, which means that your brain reads that as like the definition. When you see really defined windows on a building, your brain tends to read that as like the lights are on inside the building, and you can see the windows more clearly. So that suggests night. So we'll have fun. So we'll do. I don't really know that I normally when you're batch processing together scenes, you want to have this split screen view because you want to keep referring to what you've already done, and like borrow colors and shadows and vibes and everything, so that you get that consistency. But I think because these are completely different times of day, it may not matter. I may be able to just kind of. I don't know, just shade in a completely different palette because it's going to be completely dark compared to over here on the right. So we'll see. So for fun, I'll get out of the split screen view and we'll try to do it here. Nice. Solar does art. You're making comics while watching the making of comics. That's great. I love that. Yeah, Nat, you made a live. I was trying to, I don't know. I don't have a consistent streaming schedule, which kind of sucks because like you kind of need a consistent streaming schedule to be able to, I don't know, build any kind of audience on streaming, but I just can't. Like I can't, I don't know my own schedule. It's so erratic, you know? So I'm just trying to stream at different times when I can, hoping that different people who are not available at other times can join. You know, if you had like work or school or something last time, because we did it in the day, like maybe I'll try it at night. So I don't know. Instead of having a consistent schedule, I'm trying to actually like just do it whenever and hope that people can join at least one of them, you know? So this panel is pretty cool. It starts from like pure color, and then I've talked about how in this story, like the color world kind of like breaks into the black and white world. Sometimes it like breaks in for a moment and then recedes. So that's what you're seeing here. It's like full color that then like kind of dissolves back into black and white. So that's, I already off stream, I already finished this top panel and the left panel that's red. I still can't decide if I need texture on the letters, the yellow lettering. But part of me actually kind of likes that there's not texture, because there's texture on everything else. There's texture on her face. I don't know if you can see it, but there's like a subtle halftone, like a red halftone on top of the orange. And then there's like this line. It's like horizontal line halftone here on the pink, or magenta, I should say. So it's kind of nice that it's actually kind of nice to not have any texture on the lettering so that it pops even more. It's like the sort of the odd thing out in the panel. So I kind of feel like these are done, the first two, so we can just work on the third one. And then like all things that Lydia draws, there's a lot of detail in this big wide panel, and so we have to figure that out. I think I finished the lower left panel already, to be honest. I think it might be good. And then we can work on the bottom right panel. I don't know. We'll see how much time we have. I might just be done after. I might not want to. I might not want to do this whole thing now that I'm looking at it. But we'll see. We'll see how many hours I got in me. Hi, I'm new here, and I'm starting to wait. Let me read your question again. Sorry. I'm new here and I'm starting to study comics. Any tips for beginners? I mean, read the usual suspects of like how to make comics. Read Understanding Comics by Scott McCloud. Read there's a book that people don't talk as much about, but it's equally as good. It's called Graphic Storytelling and Visual Narrative by Will Eisner. And then I think, didn't the guy who did JoJo make a really good manga book? It's called like The Art of Manga or something. Anyway, that's like the trilogy that you should read. But other than that, I think in order to get good at comics, you just have to make comics, and you have to stop worrying about your comics not being good. Like, you got to just dive in and do it. You know what I mean? I'm actually like a really big fan of. I'm a really big fan of telling people not to worry about being good and just putting that aside. And then what happens is because you stop worrying about being good, you just start making comics, and your first couple comics are going to be bad, and you get all those bad comics out of your system, and then you start getting good. But I've seen a lot of people who are like, they read a lot of comics and they're like, well, these are all amazing. My stuff is not going to be that amazing. I'll wait to make my comic until I practice drawing more. And then they just never make a comic. So I always tell people, just like, stop worrying about your comics being good and just start making comics, because then you'll practice and then your comics will get better, I'm drinking Death Wish coffee, which is like marketed as the world's strongest coffee. So we'll see also how jacked up I get during this stream. By the end, I'm going to be like, it's like absolutely grinding my teeth as I like grind the nib of the Wacom pen off onto the tablet. It's like, because that's a big cup of coffee, man. That's a lot of the world's strongest coffee. All right. So so this is night. So I got to go darker than I think. The problem is panel contrast. So the way this panel's laid out, which is tricky, not going to lie, is panel 3 here is overlapping panel 4, so panel 4 is your big dominant panel on the page, obviously. Unfortunately, it's being overlapped by panels 3, 5, and 6. So there's not a gut. I mean, obviously here, so there are panel gutters here. These are traditional panel gutters, but we don't have that. We have an overhang or an overlap, which means that we have to maintain a little bit stronger panel contrast, which is going to be hard because it's panels that are all the same scene. So the shading is going to be similar. So we have to kind of fake a little bit of panel contrast. So you can see I started to do it. I'll turn the lines off. I started to do it where I intentionally, see how I faded this panel to like a light gray so that it pops against the edge of the big dominant panel, which is darker gray. And then I faded these two panels up to light gray so they pop against the bottom edge of the dark gray. It's not correct to the scene because, as you can see, I was starting to shade in this like end table because that's like presumably like a dark, piece of furniture. But the second you shade the table, it starts to bleed back into the color of the big panel. So I'm already like running into contrast issues. Yeah, Death Wish is, I feel like Death Wish coffee has the same energy as Liquid Death. Like, it's both like a pretty generic product being absolutely driven by like skull and bones aesthetic marketing. Good for them. It definitely worked on me. All right, so I don't know. Okay, so another way to do this is to make the outs. Maybe we have to work on the big panel first, so we know what we're working with in terms of like what the final shading is, so we know what to do with these overhang panels. So maybe we'll switch to this panel for a little bit, even though I really don't want to, because it's intimidating. But let's say that this shade is the color of the walls. And so let's make outside even darker because it's nighttime. All right, so I'm just kind of blocking the windows. This is gonna be tricky, man. This is tricky. I have to say, I've made a video about this before, but I think black and white night scene is about as hard as you can get in terms of like coloring. Coloring, shading a comic. It doesn't get much trickier than that, to be totally honest with you. Because it's all like extremely sensitive contrast decisions, and if you make the wrong decision, stuff starts to blend together a little bit. All right, so and then we want the windows to look like they're lit. But I feel like when you look at a cityscape and the windows are lit up, it's not like consistent. Like it's like the people who are staying late or the floor that they forgot to turn the lights off. So we can do some, let's try that. Let's like go in and like randomly color in some windows. That might kind of look, cause I live in New York, so I see this all the time. Like you're like leaving your office late at night and you look back up at the city and there's like random windows that are lit up. So it's not predictable. And I feel like there's always like a floor that they forgot to turn the lights off, or it's like the floor that they're cleaning, so there's like a whole floor that's lit up, you know? But it's not every floor. Something like this, I don't know. These are the kinds of important details that, you know, everyone will notice. This is really worth doing, you know, because like I'd say 90% of your readers are going to stop, look at the page. Wow. What realistic lights. So anyway, I highly recommend it, you know. Oh, is that a video game question? What are your tips? What are your tips for text boxes in video games? I know you aren't a developer, but customer specific bubbles. Yeah, I would say it's the same. It's the same brain, right? Like, because like comics have narrative boxes. People think comic books use talk bubbles, speech balloons, and thought bubbles, but nobody really uses thought bubbles that often anymore. Most people use narrative boxes. So, it's kind of the same thing, right? Like, you see a lot of narrative boxes in comics that are basically like speech balloons, or I mean, text boxes in video games. I don't know. I'm a big fan of styling text boxes and narrative boxes to match characters. So, like, if you have a character who has like a predominantly green costume, you make their narrative box or text box green. I really like that because then you always know who's talking, and even if those characters aren't on camera or on screen, you can see a like dialogue going on between two characters because you can see that it's like, oh, it's the yellow box talking to the magenta box, and those are the two characters who have like matching color schemes. I think thinking of them as like they should match your characters is like one really interesting sort of like life hack for it. Okay, so I think I'm missing a trick, which is that buildings at night are kind of like dark objects. So I'm gonna, before I go in too much on the windows, I gotta like block out the buildings as like kind of these like monolithic dark figures. Do you pre-plan most of your characters, including background characters, before you start writing? Are you talking about like purely developing them from a writing standpoint, or are you talking about like character design, like visually? Because you should definitely not just write characters. You should not write characters. You should not write characters unless you've like planned them out for sure, like from a personality, backstory standpoint. Like you should know that before you're writing them. But if you're talking about like visual, you definitely don't necessarily need to know what they look like in order to write them. You can write the whole thing and then do all your visual character designs after. Yeah, I mean, you can write your whole. You can think of if you're talking about visually, yeah, visually. If you can write your whole story without knowing any of what your characters look like, but you might have like a character who has a certain trait that's like really distinct. Like I don't know, they're half cyborg, and that obviously affects how they act and walk and talk. And you may want to have an understanding of like how much of their body is cyborg, so that you know kind of like how to write that kind of character, but. You could absolutely write a whole comic without knowing anything of what they look like and leave it up to the artist to figure out, or you do it later. It's not like essential, you know? Think of like a movie, you know, like they write screenplays for movies, and they don't know who's going to play. Sometimes they have actors in mind. Oh. The scratch discs are full. Hang on. Give me 1 sec. I gotta fix that. It's because I got way too much stuff saved. I've been coloring and I've been screen recording everything that I'm doing. And I keep forgetting to change where it saves the like the default files. Like when I just use QuickTime and I screen record my screen, and so I have every page that I've ever colored documented. I have like just gigabytes and gigabytes of screen recordings of like my coloring process because I need to be able to make content out of it. The problem is I keep forgetting to change where it saves the default location where it saves those. So I'll color for 3 hours, stream the whole thing, and it'll save it to my desktop, and it's like, you know, a 30 megabyte 4K video file, and I'll accidentally fill up my hard drive really fast. So I have to remember to like move stuff to hard drives. What I should do is set it up so that it saves screen recordings to the hard drive, the external hard drive, and not my computer's hard drive. Because if you fill up your computer's hard drive, you can't use Photoshop anymore, because it needs to run a bunch of scratch disks to be able to function. Yeah, we're getting there. We're getting there. This ain't my first cityscape. Don't worry. We're going to do that lower gradient, because there's a lot of street lights. There's a lot of like surface level light in a city. But I want to I just want to like block out the forms first before we do any lighting. But yeah, that's a good call. I think people forget like how much light is on, how many lights are on in a city at night. There's a significant amount of light pollution, you know what I mean? That bleeds like pretty significantly off of the streets, up onto the buildings, up into the sky. So we'll get all of that. I'm actually using a pretty dark gray. I'm using a 70%, which is pretty much the limit of what I feel comfortable using. Any darker than 70%. I mean, I don't think I ever use anything darker than a 70%, because anything darker than 70%, I'm like worried about it like interfering with the black line art. You know what I mean? There's this cool bonsai tree here. The bonsai tree is awesome. And I actually think it'll be really easy to shade, because I think there's so much detail in the tree trunk and the branches that we might not really need to do much, because I think Lydia did the work for us. It's good to see what the city is starting to look like zoomed out. It'll work for sure. We gotta do some lighting passes, but just getting a sense of like the city being really dark is that's actually like a nice, I'm starting to see how this panel is gonna actually have a really nice composition when it's all shaded, you know? We'll do some of the buildings in the back a little lighter, but I'll just finish blocking out the front ones. Yeah, this is going to be cool. The thing that I'm not sure about yet is what color or what shade the bed is going to be, because I think it's a hotel. It's a hotel room, so presumably it's like the typical white sheets. So the question is, when it's night, like how far do you let the white sheets pop, or how much do you darken them down? It's kind of a stylistic choice. I'm just gonna kind of Bob Ross. I call this Bob Rossing it. It's when you just kind of like stop being super detailed in the background and you just start to suggest shapes. I don't know if you've ever seen Bob Ross do trees, but he literally takes a fan brush and he like pushes it into the canvas and just starts to make tree shapes vaguely. So I kind of I don't know. I'm gonna not overthink this and kind of treat it a little bit more like I'm oil painting. I'm just kind of suggesting the shapes over here. All right, that'll work. Do I create the character designs? I don't. I mean, I'm capable of creating character designs, but Lydia's like really good at that stuff. Like, I don't know. I talk a lot about how I think Lydia's like a really exceptional comic book artist. I think she's like very undiscovered and underrated. And one of the reasons why I say stuff like that is her ability to do like beyond just drawing the comic. She's really, really good at character design, like coming up with like really interesting outfits and costumes, and she's really good at understanding how body language affects your perception of people's personality. She's really good at drawing faces that are distinct from one another. Or just thinking of little clever things like having our main character have a septum piercing. Which is like, I know that kind of stuff seems obvious, but it's amazing how often a comic book artist doesn't think to put those kinds of really distinct details. So even if she's wearing a hat or she's in a different outfit than you're used to seeing her, you can read her as the same character in every panel because she's got that like septum piercing. Just those like really clever things I think are like tricks that people miss. Lydia's really, really good at character design from a storytelling understanding, like understanding how to design someone's costume so that they are forced to move in a certain way because you've written them to be a very specific type of character with a certain physical characteristic. So she really understands how to design characters from like a very fundamental storytelling and character building standpoint. Not a lot of comic artists are good at anatomy. A lot of comic artists are good at drawing stuff, but not a lot of comic artists are good at like planning out the pieces so they all work together, if that makes sense. Moldy Maggots. What an awesome name. Hi. I'm glad you're here too. Oh, you have to go. That's too bad. Well, at least you stopped by. Yeah, this city's cool, man. That's a really dark... I mean, that's a choice. That's a dark background, but I like it. Yeah, all right. You can see what it's going to look like with, like, the bright windows, but I'm not going to get too in the weeds on doing that yet. I kind of want to start to develop other parts of the panel so that I don't get too lost in the sauce, you know? We'll go back and do the windows. For now, let's do everything a little darker, except for the stuff that's bright. So the bed is going to have those white hotel sheets, so it's going to be probably one of the brightest things in the room. Oh God, what have I done? Oh God. I totally got lost making a selection, and I have no idea where I am. Okay, we messed up. Oh, did I get lucky? Okay. I think I got lucky. Yeah, this coffee is strong, man. I'm not gonna lie. I feel like I'm looking through a tunnel. How was my day? Are you asking me how my day was? That's very nice. Not very many people ask me how my day was. How was my day? It was okay. I work a day job. Like, I work like a pretty significantly intense day job. So that's what I don't think a lot of people realize is, like, when I'm working on comics, it's like, because I spent all day getting my other stuff done that has nothing to do with comics, and I have to, like, I finally made the time to do comics, you know what I mean? So I don't know. I was busy today, but it wasn't a bad day. I just was like, I know after I finish the stream I'm gonna crash, because I already was on the computer all day for work, and I'm like, I think I woke up at like 8 and started work at 8:30. So it's been a long day, but it wasn't a bad day. Just busy. All right, we're gonna try 50 for the rim. Let's try 50% gray. Pretty good. Okay, so for sure, I actually think I want to make the bed lighter. It's probably at 40. Yeah, it's probably at 40. Let's go 30. See how that feels. 35. 30. Okay, we're gonna do 35, which means these, like, kind of modern lampshades are going to be 35 too. So the brightest things in the room are these, like, white lampshades, which they're off, but they're still white. So they're going to pop a little bit. How are you so productive? I don't know, man. I don't really know that it's like healthy or good. I think it's probably good for people to have more free time, more hobbies, more time with friends, but I have prioritized other things lately. I'm also like a little bit older. I think also, I'm in my late 30s now, and so I definitely had fun. I enjoyed myself in my younger years, and then at some point, I think what happens is you do start to kind of like buckle down a little bit, get a little bit more serious about stuff like your career or the things that you. I don't know. When I turned 30, I was like, man, I should get more. I got to get more serious about like the things I always wanted to do. I always wanted to make a real comic, quote unquote, like make one that like was real, like looked professional, was sold on like an online store or in a comic book store, like was a real product. You know what I mean? So that I think at some point, I think for some people you become more productive as you get older, just because you kind of look around and you're like, all right, maybe it's time to kind of do the things I always wanted to do from like a accomplishment standpoint. You know what I mean? That's Cat, that's a really good question. How do you decide which values to use? So you can see I've got my swatches open. We're doing a black and white panel. So I've got my swatches open, and it's the default. These are the default Photoshop swatches. But almost every drawing program is going to come with this arrangement of like 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35, etc. So there is less math. I know it sounds like there's a lot of math to it because I'm calling them 10, 15, 25, like, and I'll say like, oh, maybe I need 35 here, maybe I need 40 here. But honestly, it's just experience. It's like I've done so much of this that I instinctively know roughly what 40 looks like, what 20 looks like what level of gray that is. And in my head, I just can see the room kind of like the way when I close my eyes and I like picture what this room should look like when it's finished, I kind of know, like I kind of see it. Like I know it's at night, so I know everything's going to be darker than normal. And I just kind of instinctively know that like something that's lighter, like white hotel sheets at night, would be roughly 30 or 35. I just know that just from having colored like several hundred panels. Like, you know what I mean? I don't know. It's just like an instinct thing as much as anything else. And you can get there if you spend a lot of time doing this. If you like spend your whole life doing it. But I just kind of know, and there's no rule. It actually is easier. It's easier in color. So if I go down to this is the color palette that I use for the scenes that are in the dream world. And this has a palette where I've got like sheets I've made of reference where it's like, okay, this character is these colors. Or if I need a shadow, I know that I often grab this purple or this purple. When it's black and white, it's more just like this instinct of knowing like, all right, I need everything to roughly pop against each other so nothing runs together. And I kind of have like an understanding of like the base values that work together. I know that like 10 to 15% difference is pretty significantly noticeable. So if I've got 20% on something and I want to make something next to it pop, I need to go to 35. I don't know. It's just like a whole thing. You thought I was 26? That's because I like, a lot of people think I'm younger. It's because I moisturize my skin. But it's also because I think I'm on like younger, quote unquote, younger platforms. Like I'm on TikTok and, I don't know. And because I'm on TikTok, I like kind of understand memes that are not 20 years old. So I've noticed a lot of people who are, as they get older, they sort of become set in their ways and they stop like kind of being up on things. And for whatever reason, maybe because of Batting Studios, I've managed to like Seem a little younger because I actually am like consuming content on platforms made by people who are 25 years old. But that's definitely not going to last forever. There's going to be a very soon. There's going to be a time when I'm going to just start seeming older and older. It's going to happen very suddenly, I'm sure. It would be really embarrassing. Oh, I posted it. Let's see. How's it doing? I posted a TikTok right before I went live. I want to see how it's doing. Speaking of trends. Oh, God. I think it's actually getting a lot of views. No, it's not. False alarm. Stupid TikTok. How do you highlight something significant to the story if it's in the shadows? Oh, well, you can really, a lot of comic coloring is non-literal coloring, is like is like you can fake it, like, you know what I mean, like you can push stuff pretty far away from what's actually realistic if you're really trying to highlight something. Like you could, if I really wanted you to notice, like check this out, like I might actually really want you to notice her. So let's do that actually. There is no way this character in real life would ever be as bright as I'm about to shade her. Let's go even further. Like, if you looked into a room where someone was a person, you know, even a person of like fairer skin tone, was sitting in an all white bed in a hotel, there is no way they would be the brightest thing in the room. There's no way, because the white sheets would be, even when there's very little light, white is still pretty stark. But emotionally, I really want you to feel this moment of like she's scared and alone. So I want to kind of like isolate her by making her a very unique tone in the panel. Let's go even further. I'm just going to push it. Like, I'm already at 15. I might just make her pure white just for the purposes of making sure you see her. There's no way you would ever in real life have that, but narratively in this comic, like, I think that's really cool. Like, I think she's going to really pop, and the fact that she's bright white kind of feels like she's scared. Like, you know, when somebody gets scared and the blood drains from their face and they get a little pale. Like, I think you can just totally cheat it. This whole room's going to get darker and darker as I like shade it and add more of a nighttime feel, and I'm going to leave her really bright. And it's just like, I want the focal point, one of the focal points, to be her. Are you naturally gifted, or have you drawn for hours every day? Well, I'm not a very good, I'm an okay artist, but like Lydia is the one who's the actual like talented artist. You know what I mean? Like, I have a better understanding of like shading and color theory and lighting, but if you asked me to draw this panel, I could never do it. So, and I guess to answer your question more simply, like, I really don't believe in talent. I know that sounds weird, but like, I think Bob, I use this quote all the time, but Bob Ross, who I mentioned earlier, Bob Ross said that talent is a pursued interest. I don't think that people are born like crazy talented, but I think people are born like way more interested and way more excited to try a certain task. Like they have more fun doing it. So for example, I think people who are amazing guitarists, for whatever reason, their brain just gets more endorphins when they play the guitar, so it makes them do it all the time, so it makes them practice it, so they get really good. And that, I just love like making art, being in Photoshop, like coloring these comics. So I don't think there's a natural talent, but I think all the time that I could have spent doing something else, like I've done this, and gained skill. You know what I mean? I think anybody can get really good at this stuff if you enjoy doing it and you just practice it a lot. I was reading a comic a few days ago. I noticed a lot of the drawings, the characters looked disconnected from environments, like they were imported on top. How do you prevent this? That's a really good question. Allow me to open. Well, the way you prevent it is you have a, and this is why comic coloring is hard, because you give yourself a limited palette and then you force yourself to stick to it even on the characters. So, which is hard because then you have trouble making your characters stand out from the background sometimes. But you give yourself a limited palette and you integrate that palette across everything. So here, I'll open a page and I'll show you. Maybe this one. So this one, I'm really obeying this palette over here on the left, and I'm doing it everywhere. In fact, I'm actually changing her shading often. Like, she's a completely different color set here that in the lower right than in the upper left. But because I use this purple color everywhere on the page, including shading the background here at the bottom, it makes everything feel super integrated. But the problem is you have to figure out how to integrate all these colors and get stuff to pop. So you have to be like, okay, if she's going to be purple in this panel, I'm going to use yellow and orange. But it's the same yellow and orange that I used on the sound effect. It's the same yellow and orange I used down here on the eyes. So there's like a cohesion to everything. So yeah. Is it possible to do a full color comic on your own? Yeah, definitely. I mean, you have to invest a decent amount of time, but there are, I think I'm reading one right now. It's called It's Lonely at the Center of the Earth. It's Lonely at the Center of the Earth by Zoe Thorogood. Is that Zoe Thorogood? I hope I'm getting their name right. But I'm pretty sure that Zoe does everything. Not completely sure, but there are definitely examples of it. Yeah, if you're a little talented, it's easy to be the best in your school. But when you hit the real world and you don't know how to learn, you fall behind. Yeah, isn't that called like gifted kid syndrome or something? You see that a lot, like kids who are the smartest in their school don't ever have to try, and then they don't know how to try when they get into their first job. I will say, like I said, I work a day job, and I ran the internship program this summer. So I'm like kind of an established employee, you know. And I ran the internship program this summer, which meant I got to work with like a lot of younger kids. I call them kids. They were like, some of them, they're probably all the same age as everybody watching, but they were in their like 20s, you know. They just finished like grad school. And for the most part, I found that everybody really wanted to try and they like wanted to learn. I don't know. I think you have to be pretty arrogant to not want to keep learning, you know. It's very rare that you actually find somebody who thinks they're the best or doesn't know how to learn. I was really impressed with like pretty much everybody who was new and younger. Like they totally wanted to learn and they knew how to learn. But once in a while you find somebody who really was like the smartest kid at their school and they never learned how to do it. They never learned how to be anything other than, you know, the person who never studies the night before the test and still gets an A. Ooh, you know what's gonna work? So see how I just made this chair that's in the foreground on the left here dark? I do this all the time. I'm obsessed with this. I am obsessed with taking objects that are close to the camera and making them the darkest thing in the frame. I don't know why. I'm obsessed with it because it allows things that are really close to knock back and not distract you, but you still like totally see them and feel them in the composition, but you know that the focal point is further back. I did it here. So like the skeleton she's hitting with the sword is shaded even though the skeleton's in the foreground, and it like you notice that this, obviously the skeleton's there, but the first thing you see is her. So I'm gonna, you can obviously do that in black and white, so I'm gonna just shade this whole table dark. And then everything on the table can start to get, like, the trays and the chopsticks and the thing that's holding the bonsai tree can be lighter and pop off of it, while also the table knocks back a little bit. How to do shading without sobbing? I don't know, man. I don't know if you've consumed any of my content. I think you'll see that I also, after years of doing this and many panels shaded, I still whine and cry like quite a lot. So I don't know that I'm the person to ask. I will say the more you do this, the faster you get, you know? I'm already so confused about where the edges of the table are. Is Lydia here? I need an adult. Lydia, are you in chat? Lydia, are you watching this stream? I don't know where the edges of the table are. Shit. Okay, well, we'll figure this out. I mean, this has to be the edge of the coffee table because it's covering up the chair, but then that would mean that there's like an inset in the coffee table, right? That's like creating like a lower... Oh, or maybe it's just like it's just the design of the table. I see. No, I got it. It just so happens that this table... Man, you know, Lydia is so crazy, like, consistent with the look of objects in an environment that I could probably go look at an overhead shot from the other panel of this page and see exactly what this line... So there's this line I'm not sure about. It's this line right here. And I think it's either... I can't tell if this is like a recessed part of the table where the bonsai tree is sitting, or if it's just a line... Like, if it was like a table with like a different wood grain inlay. It's all flat surface, but there happens to be a line here because it's the design of the table. So I'm actually going to go... This is where I actually think that... her attention to detail is actually going to save me. Let's see. It's this table right here. Yeah. So there's a... Yeah, okay. So the way that she designed the table so that there's like one surface and then there's like an inlay, like smaller rectangle of like a different colored wood or like a different colored marble or whatever material it's supposed to be. So this line is that inlay. That's crazy. It's like a mat. Yeah, it's like a mat or something. So we have to account for that. Oh, yeah. Lydia's a god, yeah. That's, I mean, like, honestly, like, how many comic artists do you know where they're that tight on, like, one... This is just one room, by the way, in, like, a 40-page comic. Like, how many artists do you know that are that tight to details where, like, every time they draw the same objects, they're so consistent that you can use other angles of like random one-off objects to like find the design of it. You know what I mean? It's crazy. It's next level. Yeah, you're right, Jeremiah. You're right. It's like a cloth or like a inlay of wood or something. This is already working though, and you can see. So I'm already cheating a lot. So like, I'm cheating with the color of the shading of her. She's bright white, and I want to leave her that way so she really pops. The other thing I'm totally cheating on is this chair here is light, and this chair here is dark. But I want it that way so that the shapes don't run together. Like I want to see layers of the composition. So I want to instead of trying to be like, oh, the chairs are this shade because they're a dark color, I want to instead think about depth. So instead of trying to color these chairs consistently to each other, I'm coloring objects of the same depth or distance to the camera the same shade. So so this chair is further back, so it's going to be a different shade than the chair that's closer to the camera, which is as close as this table. So they're going to be similar shades. But yeah, I'm in the like composition mapping stage, so I can actually pause on doing detailing on the table because I'm more interested in like blocking out the big shapes. Also, I have to remember, hang on, I gotta close this page. I have to remember how I did, so there's this like big painting over her bed. I gotta remember how I was doing that. I think I was coloring it as darker, yeah. So it's darker than the other things in the room. Yeah, there's no like production designer or art director overseeing this. Like there's, you know, sometimes like really big comic companies or studios will like have like somebody who's in charge of backgrounds or like somebody who's overseeing like visual consistency or an editor or something, but she does all that. She maintains it herself. She designs the worlds and like maintains the consistency of them. Oh, what if you make a comic, what do you do with it? Yeah, so we self-publish, but man, like I people are probably so tired of me saying this, but because I say it all the time, but like, man, it's so much easier to get your stuff out there these days than it was 20 years ago when I was in high school, like wanting to make comics. Like, you really have like an endless amount of options for what you can do. If you make a comic, you can self-publish, but like you can self-publish, but you don't have to like actually print it. You know what I mean? Like you can just publish it to some like digital platform, or you can like export a PDF and sell it on your own site, which is actually what we do for our digital editions. You know, like the fact that we live in a world where the internet has enabled you to just like get your comic out there however you want. Like you could, the way you release your comic could be part of the art of it. Like you could make a cool art project where you like put up one panel a day on social media, and then at the end of it, you've like released your whole comic one panel at a time. You know what I mean? Like there's really no, like, you can also, the other thing that's happened that's been really amazing is the introduction of like really good print services where you upload your file and they'll print copies at surprisingly good quality, and then ship you a box of them. So you can, and then it's up to you to sell them. But there's so many ways to self-publish. We do most of what I just described. Yeah, you can print on demand. I don't know. I was calling it print on demand, but I don't think that that's technically what print on demand is, right? Isn't print on demand when like true print on demand is like what Amazon does with self-publishing. Like I don't know if they do it for comics, but if I write a novel, I can list it on Amazon as a print book that you can buy. But they don't. True print on demand is what Amazon does, where like there's no physical copies of it until someone buys it, and then if someone orders one copy, they print one copy and ship it to them, right? There's no like stockpile of your novel. Whereas what we do is like limited on demand printing. I don't know. There's got to be some name for it, but we'll say like we want 1,000 copies, which you also didn't used to be able to do because if you wanted to print a comic 25 years ago, you had to like go to a print shop and they had like a print minimum. They'd be like, we're not turning on the drums to print this unless you're printing 3,000 copies minimum. So the fact that you can go on Comics Wellspring, we use a site called Comics Wellspring. The fact that you can go on Comics Wellspring and like ask for like 10 copies because you don't think you can sell more than that, like that's really cool, man. Like the fact that you can do low volume print runs is like such an accessible way for like somebody who doesn't have an audience yet to like experience the fun and the joy of like self-publishing, you know? It's crazy. The fact that that exists is so awesome. It really did not exist when I first started. I actually found in a box of old things from high school, I found like a printer's quote. Like when I was 15, I was like, oh, we should get our comic printed. And I have the quote that they sent, like the invoice of what they would have charged me if I had like pressed go. It was so expensive, and I think the minimum was 3,000. And I was like, bro, I'm 15. I do not have the ability to sell 3,000 comics. There's no social media. That's the other thing is like, when I started, there was no social media. So now you can like print your own stuff. You can print a low volume run, and you can try to sell it on like your own website or on like an integrated shopping experience on social media. It's like so crazy that there's like shopping links, like all of this stuff. I don't know if people like really appreciate like how useful all this stuff is for like comic books in particular. It's so great. I hope we all stop and appreciate like the insane world we live in, you know? Yeah, I mean, social media is free advertisement. The problem is, I will say that, and I've noticed this more and more in the last like 5 to 10 years, is social media has gotten like a little too advertising-y. Like, especially lately, I feel like when I open up like any of my apps, it's just like shop links and ads and ads and ads. And even when it's not sponsored content, even when it's not a shop link, it's still someone trying to get me to like check out their band, or it's me, my dumb face, telling you to check out the comic. You know what I mean? Like, it's free advertisement, but it kind of sucks that it's like, as time goes on, more and more people are using it to promote their side hustle. It's like, and I'm, of course, adding to that problem, but oh, you're working. Oh, that's cool. You're working with an art director like at a company. Like they have their in-house art director, and you have to kind of like match their vibe and tone and brand. If you work with a good art director, I think that it's helpful. Like I think they can kind of push you to find things that you might not have found on your own, but you have to have a good art director, and it's unfortunately, you know, it's not really like, it's not like every art director is amazing, but if you find a good art director, I think they're talented, they're creative, they're willing to work with you, you know. I think it can be like a fruitful thing, you know. Man, it's so hard to shade night scenes when you don't have color. This would be a lot easier if I had color. Let's try. I'm gonna throw a gradient on here and see how it works. It's okay, I guess. I don't know that I like it though. Like, see how much of the depth I lost as I turn the shading layer on and off. It goes from having depth because the chair in the foreground is really dark to I actually like that the floor is darker over on this side of the bed, because even though it's night, the window, we're going to add more lights to the window. Because it's like a big city. I don't remember if we say in the comic, but it's basically Tokyo. If it's not Tokyo, it's like an equivalent, like massive city in Japan. And so there'd be a lot of lights outside that would do things that light does, like cast shadows, make it so that the right side of the room is a little brighter than the left side. So I do like that there's a gradient on the floor that, here, I'll turn the lines off so you can see. There's a nice drop off where it's like, it's a little brighter over here, just a little bit, and it drops off to a little darker over here, and so it suggests the idea that the open window is casting a little bit of light that's kind of dropping off as it moves away from the window. But as soon as I put this gradient on the floor, it kind of damaged what was working about the chair and the table being dark. Yeah, taking notes, yeah. Taking notes as I fake it till I make it. I really don't know what I'm doing. A lot of comic coloring is just like about feel, like feeling it out. Just like messing with different values until you kind of find something that's working. And it's I've talked about this before, but it's very vulnerable to do this on stream. Because you feel like, at least I feel like kind of an idiot. Because sometimes I have no idea what the answer is. And I'm just like beating my head against the wall, like changing colors and then eventually something clicks and you kind of find the right combo and then it looks really good, but normally people don't see all that swirl. But when you're on stream, you're like, oh my God, the Emperor has no clothes. Because everybody's been watching my videos where I've like planned it and like reviewed the footage of myself coloring and then like written a script to like sort of like capture my thoughts after the fact when I kind of knew what the final outcome was. But when you're live, you're really figuring it out live. Yeah, window streak lines make it halftone along those. Yeah, I was thinking about that. Like, I think the window. Oh, that's a good idea. Yeah, putting like a halftone. We can use our halftone brushes to do the highlighting on the window streaks, but because they're halftones, it'll feel a little bit like maybe there's a screen on the window, or it's like a little bit like there's a gossamer effect. That'll be really cool. I colored a comic recently. They wanted it in black and white, like old World War I footage. That's cool because I just watched the Peter Jackson They Shall Not Grow Old documentary, which is like it starts in black and white and then they like transition to the restored footage. Yeah, I'm really not used to doing black and white, so I colored it normally and then desaturated it. Ooh, that's dangerous. But I mean, if it works for you, like, here's what I'll say. I can't color that way. Ooh, let's do that live. Wait, oh, I closed it. Let's open that page that I had. I think this might be a good exercise in showing you why I can't work that way. Because everybody's brain works differently. So obviously do what works for you. But let's see if I'm right in that my coloring style, if I work in color, I don't think my brain is thinking about the kinds of value changes that you would need to flip it to black and white. It's nice. 3 a.m. Turtles is being very nice, but I swear to you, I don't know what I'm doing. All right, you're going to see live me do something that I never do because I've tried it before. It doesn't work for me. So I haven't tried this for years. But let's use a desaturation over my whole page. Or I guess I can just switch the color mode. Let's not do it this way. So we do image mode grayscale. And we don't rasterize. Yes. Oh, that's pretty solid, man. That's actually really good. Damn. All right. Well, I guess maybe I should be doing this now. Maybe I've gotten better since the last time I tried to do this, where I'm like a little bit more aware of like color value. It's pretty solid. There's some stuff I would change. Like if I was going to go in and, man, this is such a good idea for a video. I feel like you just gave me like my next video. Cause there are things I would change. Like the first thing I would do is like just delete the background behind her here. Cause it's just kind of like, there's no reason to have this be just like a general amorphous gray when you could just make this panel. Yeah. Like, that's already better. Like, I want her to stand out more from the background. And then I'd probably take the background out of these two panels. Because I like the gradient on the bottom. That makes the whole page go from, like, light to dark on the bottom. But see how, once I've switched it to black and white, I don't have any contrast between the background of these two panels and this big bottom panel. So I would also take the background out of... Oh God, where is this halftone? Yeah, like, see, that's already better. Oh, but there's not a background on the panel on the right because it's like just her. It's close. And then I definitely would make the eyes different because I want the irises and the pupils of the eyes to be a different shade than the background. So I would probably, I mean, yeah, see, that's better. Like as soon as I turn off a couple layers, yeah, that's cool. See, as soon as I flip it to like the opposite where they're like glowing white, it like makes the eyes stand out more. And then the staircase, she and the staircase are like blending into the background too. Or I would like push the light. See how there's like a light halftone behind her? I would push that a lot further. Because I really want that to like stand out. something like that. It's close though. It was like a good base, but I would want like there to be more contrast overall. Nice. I listen to your videos whenever I'm drawing, and your advice helps. That's great. Yeah, like, it is a good feeling to know that like we're putting out content that's not just like adding to the noise of just like buy. Like, we're obviously like promoting our comics too, but it's nice that we can do that by like actually creating stuff that helps people beyond just like telling people to buy our stuff. Yeah, that's cool. This works. I think if it works for you to color this way, you know, where you just color it how you know how, which is in color, and then you flip it to black and white, I guess that can work. I would challenge you, if that's how you do black and white, I would challenge you, just because I'm a big fan of like creativity through limitations. I would challenge you to like force yourself to just work in black and white and practice it, because you might end up making like different decisions, or it might like weirdly change how you think about color, because you start to be more aware of like value and like similar, because like two colors can be very different, but they can be the same value. So like you can have an orange and a blue that stand out from each other when they're in color, but are the exact same shade of gray when you flip it to gray tone. And because I've worked in both color and black and white, I am very aware of that. So even when I'm working in color and it's never going to get converted to black and white, I'm very aware of color value, and even when I have the benefit of different colors, I try to keep color values different so that I get that extra level of pop, you know? How would you show different skin tones in black and white? Oh, you just use different shaders, you know? Like, people come in different shades, you know? So you can make lighter skinned people a lighter shade of gray, and darker skinned people a darker shade of gray. It's a really, you know, it's actually like one of the things I like about working in black and white is you can still represent, like, you can still have like a diverse cast. You can still, you know, represent a lot of things that are, I think, important for like a good cast of characters. You're not limited in that way at all. That's cool, man. Actually, this is making me regret that we're not doing the whole book in black and white, actually. Whatever. Let me save this, because I'm going to want to probably show this in a video. Call this BW Alt. Oh, you did the cone? You did the cone exercise. You and no one else. I feel like that video like confused people, if I'm being totally honest. Probably shouldn't have tried to make that a 60-second video. Even though it is a really cool exercise. But I'm glad it helped. Oh, that's cool. Yeah, you got a values proof hotkey. That's okay. So you know what you're doing. That's next level stuff. All right. So same thing is happening over here on the left, where the hot sauce bottle is like breaking into her reality. So we can just steal the same colors that it is over here. Do you use presets, filters for halftone fills? Yeah, I do halftones a bunch of different ways. I use halftone brushes, which is how I painted in the halftone that's like glowing around. Actually, okay, so I can show you both on the same screen. So over here on the left, I use a halftone brush that I can control the size of the dots through the pressure of the brush. So that's how I get this like kind of like old school glow, where the dots get smaller as they fall away, so it gives it that extra kind of like glow. And then the halftone over here on the right, that's like the gray vase behind the bottle, is essentially a filter. Like in Photoshop and also in like Procreate and Clip, there's settings where you can take a flat gray and like convert it into a halftone, and it'll use a more consistent dot pattern. So the brushes give me more variance over halftone. You know, I can use pressure as I go to kind of like control it and give it some character. And then the filter kind of gives you like more of a stark, overlaid, consistent pattern, if that makes sense. So yeah, I use both. All right, it's getting there. All right, I'll just get the hot sauce bottles in. Oh, and we can do the peppers too. These little like dancing chili guys are really fun. Yeah, I can show you real if you really want to see. I hope I'm saying your name right. Forgive me if I don't say your name right, but Fu Cheng. I can show you real quick how I do the halftones. It'll look like crap because I'm on stream and like the compression like creates a moire effect, but if you take any object here, we'll do her, because I am gonna overlay a halftone onto this sort of like crying figure. So if you merge all the layers of something, in Photoshop, nope. Hang on. Yeah, so you make a copy of your layers and then you merge them. You make it a smart object. And then you open that smart object up and you convert it to I think my dumb head is covering this, but you go to image mode grayscale. And then once you're in grayscale, then you can do image mode bitmap. And once you're in bitmap, you can choose all your you just use halftone screen. It says like output, you set the output the same as your file, so 300 dpi, and then you do halftone screen. And when you hit OK, you can do round, diamond, ellipse, line, square, cross. I usually use round. You can set the dot angle, which changes like kind of how the dots look. Like it can be the difference between it working or not. Sometimes you just have to try. So we'll start with 45 degrees and we'll do the frequency at like 6. The higher the number is on frequency, the smaller and more dots you're going to get. So if I set this to like 100, you're going to barely see the individual dots. But if I set it to like 60, God, this probably looks like crap on stream. Oh, it hurts my eyes. So then you save your smart object and you set it to multiply. And now you've got like a screen halftone over top of what you were doing. And then you can change the opacity of it. So you just get it as a texture, something like that you feel more than actually see. It's cool. So that's like the Photoshop way of doing it. There's a similar process in Procreate and I think Clip. I think in Procreate it's called like newspaper effect. The newspaper effect is what gives you this like black and white halftone pattern. That's what I do. I color the whole thing flat gray and then I convert all of them to halftones and like overlay the dots on top while simultaneously using halftone brushes in other places. So I get a blend of halftones. I hope this is scintillating, interesting content for everyone. Like way in the weeds on Photoshop, but not a lot of people know Photoshop or use it. I know every time I talk about Photoshop, I know a lot of people say that it's, expensive. There may be concerns about subscription model. I don't know. I won't try to convince anybody unless Adobe pays me. I'm just saying, I will shill for you, Adobe, because I'm constantly telling people, look, all I'm saying, use whatever works for you, especially if money is an issue. You know what I mean? But all I'm saying is one of the most common questions that we get in the comments is, what program do you use? And I always say the truth, which is I use Photoshop, I use Illustrator. So I'm just saying, I know Adobe likes to have creative partners and they pay for sponsored posts. I don't know why the phone's not ringing, Adobe. I'm just saying. Oh, Maya Sotis. Effects Halftone newspaper. Yeah. So Adobe, pay me, but the way to do it in Procreate is in the chat if you use Procreate, which I know a lot of people do. Ooh. If you had to only listen to one album for the rest of your life, what would it be? Well, I'm like a music junkie. If I had to only listen to one album for the rest of my life. Well, I mean, I have favorite albums, but I don't know that there are albums that I would want to listen to over and over and over for the rest of my life, because I feel like the answer to that question is different than what's your... Because I'm a big metal fan. A monstrous metal fan. Just absolutely... I guarantee you that I know more weird metal albums than anyone you've ever talked to in your life. And I probably own more of them because I have a massive record collection. But I don't know that I would pick a metal album as the only album I could listen to for the rest of my life. Because there's a lot of times when I'm not in the mood to listen to metal or So I feel like the answer to that question is an album that would work for different moods, different eras in your life, different it'd have to be a general soundtrack to your experience, right? So I would say maybe Jean, I don't know, I hope I'm saying his name right. Jean-Michel Jarre has an album called Oxygen, but it's spelled like oxygen with an E at the end. That album is one of the best albums ever made, and it's extremely musically diverse, and it's it would just be you could play that on repeat for the rest of your life, and it would be good background music that would make everything that you do feel epic. So that's my answer. Oxygen. It's here, I'll pull it up. I won't play it because I'll get demonetized or whatever. Oh, and also I was checking out this band Doll Riot. Shout out Doll Riot. They came up on my TikTok feed. They're really good. This album. This is my if I could listen to one album for the rest of my life album. It's an absolute genius piece of electronic music. It's also a huge inspiration on the music that I make for Batting Studios. Oh, dang, Jeremiah, am I chasing Adobe when I should just be switching over to Clip and get that sweet, sweet Clip sponsorship? I might, if Clip called me and they were we'll give you a really sweet deal, but you have to use Clip forever, I'd be unless Adobe's watching, in which case I'm an Adobe sweet man for life. Oh, that's a really good answer. The Mollusk by Ween. I really like Ween, a lot. The Mollusk by Ween is a really good answer. That's a really good answer, man. That's a pretty musically diverse album too. That was like an era of, that's like a style and era of alternative rock that I really like. That was all the stuff that was on when I was a kid. Like growing up, you'd turn on the radio, it would be like, there was like an alternative rock radio station in my hometown. And it was all like Ween and Nirvana, and I feel like weirdly, they played a lot of like Beastie Boys too, and Rage Against the Machine. But I remember them playing a lot of like alternative rock too. Gaiden, if you like Shadow, like seriously, I know I make everything a plug for the stupid Bandcamp. I mean, it's under my picture right now. But if you like the Shadow of the Colossus OST, like, you should absolutely check out the latest Interdimensional soundtrack, because it's like inspired by a lot of like stuff, video game soundtracks, and like stuff that's got that like epic bombastic quality. So there you go. All right, just grabbing colors for consistency. Mollusk on cassette, that's cool. I collect tapes. Check this out. Here. There's like I've got like drawers and drawers of Dungeon. These are all my Dungeon synth tapes. I've got like a couple hundred Dungeon synth cassettes that I listen to, and I actually have a working tape player, so I'm all about the cassette life, man. That's awesome that you like. I feel like cassettes are really valuable now. It's like really hard to get them. I also have a bunch of death metal cassettes that are also really hard to find. I've got like a bunch of the band Death. It's like one of the greatest death metal bands of all time. I've got a couple of their original like 80s tapes. I've got a bunch of like tapes from the 80s and 90s of the band Bolt Thrower. And then I've got a lot of like really embarrassing like hair metal cassettes. Like I've got like Motley Crue and Whitesnake and Twisted Sister. I've got all that stuff on tape. All the stuff that got killed off when like alternative rock came. Like Ween like was very much responsible for killing off all those bands, but I have their albums on tape. Is the first copy of Interdimensional available to purchase? It will be. We put the digital editions up. If I have to make that announcement formally on the socials, but our shop is kind of closed down because I'm trying to finish this comic. Once this comic is done, we're going to reprint everything, including the first issue, the second issue, and then this new one. And the Kickstarter money we raise will pay for like pins and stickers. Like we're going to totally restock our shop once we finish this issue and do like production runs of everything. So the shop is kind of closed down, but we did put the digital editions back up. So if you want to read Interdimensional 1 and 2, That's the only thing in our store is you can buy the PDFs of both together. And they look great. The digital editions look great. Like I know that having the printed comic is cool for people, but those digital editions are nice and crispy and sharp. I was really stoked with how they turned out. Like I managed to get the export settings out of these programs like really tight and good. I don't know if the Chili guys... So obviously the Chili guys are... they're going to pop naturally because they're in color. But I don't know if they... I don't know if they're Weirdly, I don't know if they're popping enough for my taste yet. I might have to cheat the colors a little lighter on them, just to give them that extra bit of like brightness to make them pop. We'll see. Yeah, I grew up with tapes too. I really like the like cassette hiss. I mean, that's like the cassette hiss is so amazing. Like it's like, because it's like it's like how people listen to like white noise or like pink noise or whatever to like calm down. I don't know if somebody's studied cassette tape hiss, but it's got to be like at a frequency that's like aesthetically pleasing, right? Or that our brains like accept as calming. Because if you put on a tape and it's got like hiss in the background, or it's like even the hiss of a tape before the music starts, it's like really, there's like an aesthetic to that that's like really cool. Like to the point where there's like a whole, industry of like guitar pedals and effects pedals that are like lo-fi machines that just add different kinds of like tape hiss, There's like VST plugins for audio production that just add like analog hiss, like whether it's like 1/4 inch reel-to-reel hiss or 1/8 inch hiss or whatever from like a compact cassette. Yeah, here. Yeah, here's a bunch of death metal tapes I've got Coffin Rot, Death Hammer. Oh, this one's black metal. I think they're Norwegian. Evil Feast. This is actually a really good album. Spectral Wound. These are all extremely good albums. If anybody wants to check them out. Yeah, I've like got so many cassettes, man. Cassettes are really big in like the heavy metal scene because everybody remembers that like heavy metal was big in the 80s and 90s, like early 90s. So like everybody associates cassettes with that era, and everybody like is chasing that aesthetic all the time in that scene. So bands still put out tapes all the time. All right, sorry, we're just flatting stuff. This is not like the most interesting process, but I'm just trying to... It's really important to get these kinds of shapes in, even if they're just flats, because these are the kinds of things that like significantly alter your perception of the overall composition of the panel. So, yeah, you're right. The chili that's in front of the dark city is like blending with the background. Probably that thing of like, if you put the whole page in black and white, I bet you this red is really similar to the gray behind it. But the good news is we're going to go in and do stuff like we're going to do a light pass on the city. I want to put in windows, and I want to add a bunch of brightness outside, and then so that might help. And then you're right, we could put a glow around him, probably the same kind of glow that's around the bottle, because again, like narratively, they're like, they're breaking into our reality, so there's like gonna be that kind of like otherworldly glow around them, like sort of the hint that they're breaking through some kind of barrier or something. So There's a lot we can do to make him stand out. Even just doing it and seeing that it's not working is like something to file away and be like, okay, I now know that that's now like in my mental to-do list of this panel. Addressing that is like now on there. You know what I mean? So I'm like stacking up a bunch of, as I'm flatting, I'm like stacking up a mental to-do list of like, okay, I'm gonna have to address that. Okay, I'm gonna have to address that, you know? It's like kind of how I work. Folk, is that a typo? You collect folk music? Oh, I mean, I love all kinds of music. I'm not one of those like metal fans who's like all other music is poser. You know, I genuinely love all kinds of music. Although I don't know that I know much folk music beyond, isn't like, you know, I like Bob Dylan. I like a lot of stuff. I like a lot of the bands that played at Woodstock, you know, like quite a lot actually. So but I know there's like all kinds of folk music beyond like the contemporary folk music of the 60s. Oh, dude, Jane Doe by Converge, that's my jam, man. I was in a band that was like kind of a similar sound to Converge. I put it in our Discord. We have we launched a Bad Ink Studios Discord, so you can go join that if you want. But there's like a music channel inside our Discord where people share albums they like, and my old band that sounds like Converge is still on Spotify. So if you want to hear me play bass in a very heavy band that sounds like Converge, it's like hardcore, metallic hardcore, like metal influenced hardcore. Filk, is that actually is that like Neutral Milk Hotel inspired folk? I don't know what Filk is. Oh, sci-fi and fantasy. Oh, I thought it was like folk music based on, because like I know the band Neutral Milk Hotel is like one of the most influential like indie folk bands, so I thought it was like a reference to that. Oh, sci-fi and fantasy fandom? There's got to be a lot of crossover with like video game music, right? Which therefore would have a lot of crossover with like synthwave and dungeon synth. I bet if I heard it, I would love it, because I love all that stuff. Filk. I've never heard of that. You learn something new every day. It sounds pretty awesome. I saw this band that played, they play like NES soundtracks, like Nintendo soundtracks, live as like a full band. They like transpose all the like chip tunes from classic games into a full like rock band. What the hell were they called? I saw them perform The Legend of Zelda live, and they had a speedrunner on stage play the first Legend of Zelda game like on a Nintendo, and they like played the entire soundtrack while he played. They did Mega Man also. What the hell are they called? I'll think of it. Bit Brigade. They were awesome, man. Super talented band. One of the best bass players I've ever seen in my life was the bass player for the band Bit Brigade. Because if you actually listen to all those old like NES soundtracks, like the chiptune stuff, they programmed crazy bass lines into those. I mean, they're all over the place. And the fact that he was able to like translate that into like a physical performance on the frets of a bass was amazing. I don't know. Is it like a 50s to early 90s? I've never heard of that. Fantasy. What's like a really popular, what's like the iconic folk band? Like if I was going to recommend like a surf band, I would say, oh, you know, listen to the Ventures. Like, is there like a equivalent? Is it an American, or is it like Japanese? I know like in Japan they were doing a lot of stuff with like playing with like sci-fi and fantasy inspired music in the 70s and 80s. I'm gonna have to check that out. All right, this is actually helpful. I think somebody earlier was talking about putting a gradient over the buildings. I think it might be the time to do that. So yeah, if you were here earlier, we were talking about how the street, like when you look at a city at night, like a big city, New York or Tokyo, there's a lot of glow coming up from the street. Like street lamps, cars, buildings on the ground. That actually changes your perception of the kind of what night looks like in a city. Like night in a city is actually brighter than you think. And now that I've got that in, I think I can actually push the darks on the window and the wall here. What's my name? Yeah, I'm Evan. Batting Studios is Evan and Lydia, so I'm the, like, if you look at the credits of our comics, it says like Evan, writer, you know, letterer, colorist, and Lydia's like the artist. I used to make more content where I like talked about myself or whatever, and then I realized people don't care. So our videos became more like narrated process videos and less about like me as people. But so it's not surprising if you don't know who I actually am, because so much of our content is like more about like the theory of art, the craft of comics, you know. So let's see. I just got to be really careful that I'm working on the correct layers, because this stuff is starting to get like really layered up. So I should be on the shading layer for this. So I'm trying to, now that I've put the sort of like city gradient outside, I want to darken down this window, because presumably the light from outside is going to actually be backlighting this kind of like ledge wall here. One of the darkest parts of the room is going to be right underneath the window, right next to where it's bright, because it's going to be like kind of blasting light out, and then the part underneath it is going to be in shadow. You're going to read it as in shadow. All right, I'm filing that away. Leslie Fish or Julia Eckler. I'm filing that away. I'll check that out. I'm sure I'll like it. I really like lo-fi music. I really like bedroom aesthetic stuff. I like stuff that's recorded on like the Tascam 4-track recorder. So if it's like kind of lo-fi or like sort of like amateur, like I'm really into that. It sounds cool, man. All right, I'm filing that away. Let's just go ahead and make this whole... I think I'm going to make some of these crossbars darker too. So at least here. I have to turn off the lines to check this. Okay, so... I talk about this a lot, but I do I call it a line check. I turn off the lines and I just use it as a way to check contrast. I want to make sure that there's enough contrast without the lines, so when the lines are on, I'm not relying on them too heavily to give me the division of objects. I want to be able to turn off the lines and see exactly like where every shape is blocked out. If I turn off the lines and I don't feel like there's enough contrast, the lines aren't going to do enough to give me that back, if that makes sense. So what I'm looking at is this part right here. This is the corner of the room where the walls meet, and I want to define that wall. So I'm just going to take this shading layer here, the color that I used to shade the sort of the wall underneath the window, and I'm just going to continue it up here on this corner. And now when I turn the lines back on, I can sort of see the corner of the room here. It's nice. Oh man, I don't know. Do you think AI art can be a tool to help artists work more efficiently rather than replace them? I don't know, man. I almost don't even like to talk about AI because every time I think I just want to kind of wait and see. I don't think AI is good enough to replace a lot of artists. I really don't. Like, I don't know. I don't even want to talk about AI. When I talk about AI, and I'm even remotely pro AI, I think a lot of people who are very understandably scared of AI get mad. I think there could be uses of AI that are like tools in the same way that like Photoshop has something called content aware fill. But I really, really support human artists too. I also don't like to talk about AI because I don't love this like tone that pro AI art people have where they say to artists like, oh, you're going to be replaced, like, haha, your time is over. Like, that really bothers me. So I don't know. If AI is used, it should be a tool that's like very much like an aid and not at all like generating art. And I'm really not okay with like AI art being like basically using training data that people didn't give permission for. So I don't know. I will say that the one thing that AI might help me with is flatting. Like if I could basically, because like there's no program on earth where I could load this in and have it understand objects and be like, okay, like this is a pillow, this is a pillow, this is a pillow, you know? Like if I could flat with AI and then go and at least just get the, like I feel like AI is going to be the thing that is going to allow me one day to like load a page in, and it's like the busy work of flatting can be like, you know what I mean? Like it took me forever to like lasso tool all these letters in, or like magic wand them. If there was like a way for it to somehow be like, okay, these are all letters. Like, let me just give you a color so that you can start to play with different colors. Maybe that's like, but you know what I mean? Like I'm describing like a very fundamental, like very low in the art process tool. I'm not describing like something that generates art, you know? So I think as like a tool, maybe like AI based tools. I know that like Adobe Premiere has like editing, like where if you record yourself talking, it can like identify pauses and like chop it up for you, but you have to spend a lot of time as a human crafting it beyond that. So I don't know. I'm hesitant to talk about AI because every time I've ever talked about AI, I just get these like pro AI people being like, stop gatekeeping, like you're going to be out of a job, and it makes me feel really sad. So I don't really want human artists to go out of a job. And I think AI art is pretty bad. Like every time somebody makes a comic with AI, I'm like, who would ever buy that? So I don't know. I don't really know what's going to happen. But I can tell you that it's not as good as people think, and it's going to be a long time before somebody can just be like, make a good comic page. And it happens instantly. It takes a lot more than just art to like make a good comic page. You know what I mean? You have to have an understanding of like pacing and layout and design and so yeah. There could be some interesting like tools that are used with it, but I'm not really interested in pressing a button and trying to make it do what I want because it isn't very cool. If I just press a button and it makes art, it's usually pretty bad. I have a better aesthetic than whatever crap it comes up with, you know what I mean? But maybe there's a world where like I can heavily guide something or start with pieces that it makes. I don't know. I'm not sure. Yeah, I think if you're looking, I think people who ask that are like about to start a career in a creative field. I can tell you from experience that AI is very far away from being used. It's not good enough to replace you in a creative industry. And people who are pro AI don't understand how much scrutiny a creative person needs and how much control they need. It doesn't give you the level of control you need to like work with a client or like address notes from a boss who's an art director. Like you're safe for a while. It might be a tool. I bet in animation it'll be a tool where a lot of humans define keyframes and then it can like do the tweening. It can do the in-between animation or something to save you time so you're not drawing like 30 frames. But I think you should still consider a job in animation like a worthy pursuit, you know? Yeah, the problem with select color range is when you're flatting a comic, you don't have any colors there, right? So you can't select color range. Like you'd have to select white, but then obviously you can't. So sometimes you can just magic wand it, right? Like you could just magic wand the letter form, but then sometimes you can't because a human drew it and like it's open at the edges. So ultimately the only way to really do this properly is to like go in and just sometimes just do it manually, which can take a really long time. Yeah, I agree. I think people who are like adamantly pro AI who are not in the creative space, they think that we're all just gonna like be like, oh, well, AI is easier. I guess humans are done. But I think they really underestimate how much community is around art. Like, I don't go to comic conventions to look at a bunch of like art that's made by machines. You know what I mean? Like, I go there to get the signature of my favorite artist. And I don't think that's going to go away. Like, I don't think people understand like how much of comic books is like following your favorite creator or like wanting to see what they're up to or like coming to a live and hanging out and like. So I don't know. I'm actually not as anti-AI as you might think, because I do think that it's probably inevitable. We should probably embrace it and figure out how to make it work for us. And it'll probably end up being like a tool that helps people work more quickly. But that said, I'm very pro-human. Like, I want artists to be paid. I want artists to continue working. I want to continue supporting artists. And I enjoy the human part of creativity. Like, I enjoy watching what my friends do, and I like to follow my favorite artists. So that's what I always say. I don't want to say I'm vehemently anti-AI, because I think it's sort of like saying you're anti-internet in the 90s. It's like the internet, for better or for worse, took over. You know what I mean? Like, it is part of what we do, but people got really creative with how to use it. So I'm pro-human. I want us all to be employed, and I think we will be. Yeah, advanced, like, if you told me, hey, we can use machine learning to give you like a way better like selection tool so that you can just like in 15 minutes flat this whole page, And then I can sit here with the brush tool and give you all this shading and highlight. You know what I mean? Like, I would accept that. If they were like, this is an AI-based selection tool that allows you to like color flat a page quickly, I'd be like, sign me up, man. And I think that's what it should be used for. It should be used to eliminate tediousness in the creative process. But anybody who thinks that like you can walk into like a major comic book publisher and be like, fire all your artists, look at what I've made. Like, anybody who actually has any kind of creative taste who looks at an AI comic book right now would be like, get out, this is garbage. So there you go. Oh, nice. Yeah, you're in the Discord. Oh yeah, you're in the Discord all the time. Yeah, everybody go join the Discord. It's been really fun. It's been like a really fun experience. Seeing everybody kind of share tips. The best part about the Discord is that I'm seeing people share tips and tricks for making comics that is like helping other people. It's like really working as a sort of like a hub of shared knowledge. Humans supporting humans, you know? That's my favorite part of it. There's like 350 people. It's only been out for like 3 days. I think it's like 3. Oh, nice, Kat. Yeah, you should definitely join. I really want it to be like a positive place. I mean, we have to do something to make sure that the Discord doesn't die. Like, I really don't want it to be like a dead server in 6 months. You know what I mean? Like, I want to find a reason for people to keep coming back. I want to incentivize people to like show up more. Like, whether it's like we do like an event every once in a while, or like I don't know. Maybe they can do like a book club where we read a comic and like get on voice chat and talk about it or something. I don't know. If anybody has any ideas for how to make that place not just like a meme dump, even though I like a good meme dump, let me know. Because I really don't want it to just like die. Where people are like, oh, I used to like this server until it all died, you know? Like, I want to add value. I want to like have it be, I don't know, even if it's just like a contest or something. I don't know, something more creative than just a contest. But the book club is really the thing I was thinking about. That could be really fun. Because it doesn't have to be like our comics, you know what I mean? Like, it could be some graphic novel that everybody wants to read. Or it could be like a graphic novel that's like really underrated that not a lot of people have read. Some hidden gem. I don't know. It could be fun. Oh, that's great. I'm glad that, you know, I'll tell you the secret to why our Discord is good. You want to know the secret to why our Discord is nice? It's because there's a bunch of furries in there. It's because I'm nice to furries because they are nice people. And we let the furries in, and they're like making it a really positive place. I like love them so much because as a community, I think they face a lot of bullying, really unjust bullying. And I've said that a lot publicly. I believe it to this day that furries are the most unjustly bullied group on the internet. And so I've noticed that a lot of people are showing like furry inspired art, or they have furry inspired profile pictures. I don't know that there's like a huge group of them in there. They're welcome. I hope more join. But I've noticed that furries are extremely positive people. And I think because they've faced so much bullying, they bring sort of a shared understanding of the toxicity of the internet, and they actively work against creating that environment. It's like they go out of their way to be nice to other people, and there's only a few of them, but it's a very infectious positivity. So I adore it. I think it's great. Oh yeah, is there like a shared? Are people actually writing a shared? Are people actually writing like a new shared story? Because that's fun. Like the yes and exercise of like writing live. Like everybody writes a panel or everybody writes a chapter. Also, if any furries are watching, I really do mean what I say. I think the bullying online is awful. It really bothers me. I at this point I would like straight up like want to go to a convention, like a furry convention, and like just experience the culture, just to be a little bit more knowledgeable about it, because I think it's cool. Also, like, I genuinely think it's cool that like the amount of commitment around the money and the time that people spend on their fursuits and fursonas. And it really is like, I'm a big Star Trek fan, so I've been to like a lot of, not a lot, but like a decent amount of Star Trek conventions, and like dressing up and having your own character is like such a part of Star Trek convention fandom. So when I see people creating their own personas or, you know, wearing their fursuits, I'm like, that's the same thing in a different font. You know what I mean? Like, it's not that different. It's really not that different from dressing up as like, I'm Lieutenant Schultz. I work in engineering, you know? So again, I'm glad to see that some of the positivity they bring has come to the Discord, you know? Actively searching for a furry therapist. Yeah, they'd just be like, you know, people will be mean to you, but you just gotta like brush it off and find your people. Maybe create an alternate persona for yourself to explore different parts of your own identity. Maybe you're neurodivergent and you should like explore a diagnosis. Just be comfortable in your own skin, and you can be comfortable in your own skin by exploring other skins. Like, I feel like they would probably be a really good therapist, right? Yeah, maybe we should start a channel that is like the collective group story. That would be the way to make that server active. Is you just turn everybody loose, and it's like the goal is that by the end of a certain, like maybe like in like a couple months, the server makes a comic. You know what I mean? Where it's like some weird crowdsourced, like everybody who, because we did a thing where everybody picks their role, so you can be like a writer or a illustrator or like a letterer. I think there's like 2 of us who picked letterer. But maybe that would be fun, is like you crowdsource the entire comic. It's like a 6-page comic where it's like, okay, all the writers in a channel, like, and I think it would be fun if it's not necessarily supposed to be good, but it's supposed to be like kind of like a improv game where it's like all the writers like hack out the story with a bunch of unexpected yes-anding each other, and then the illustrators all divide it up, and then people have to color it. I don't know. It could be fun. Yeah. Oh yeah. If you had a furry therapist, you'd want them in the suit, right? It would be like actually so. I feel like that would actually be like, yeah, weirdly comforting to have like a really fuzzy, kind of like friendly looking animal or sorry, I don't want to use the wrong term. Furries are not, I'm really want to make sure I don't say the wrong thing, because I'm trying to be as respectful as possible, but it's not, they don't consider themselves animal, right? It's like otherkin or something. Anyway, you want your furry therapist to be in the suit for sure. See, this is why I have to go to a furry convention, because I really need to like learn more about the fandom and like be a more educated supporter. Fursona, yeah, it's Fursona, but it's like there's like a way they talk about their connection with us. Like when you're a furry and you have like a certain animal that resonates with you, you're not saying, are you saying that you are, because like we did a portrait for someone whose fursona was a reindeer, which I thought was really cool. that was like how all this started, actually. We did a portrait for someone whose fursona was a cyberpunk reindeer. And when your fursona is based on an animal, but you're not saying, are you saying that you are the animal, or are you saying that there's like an element of the animal mixed with a human in your identity? I don't know. Kin, it's like kin, right? Furry, you wrote a furry therapist into your movie. Oh damn, I wish they'd made it. You should figure out how to like self-fund it. All right, well, this will work for sure. This panel's really working. There's no way I'm going to finish this page tonight. It's already past midnight on the East Coast, but yeah, 3 a.m. turtles. If you want to see the cyberpunk reindeer, look on our socials, because I've posted the portrait that we did a lot. Or actually, I might be able to find it. Nah, it's buried. It's buried on my hard drive somewhere. But it actually turned out really cool, because we like took it really seriously, and we actually like rendered it in our own style, which you don't see a lot of fursonas drawn by like. I feel like a lot of fursona art is very like anime inspired, or like cell shaded, and like no shade, because I love anime to death, and but often I think the intersection with like manga and anime and furry culture is like pretty strong. So most fursonas are drawn in that style, but we intentionally drew it in our own style. So it's like a little bit more Western. It's like hand inked with a brush, like this page. It's got like really interesting shading that you don't normally see. And then I colored it in a Western comic style. So it turned out really cool, and I'm surprised you don't see more people experimenting with different art styles for fursonas. Especially if I had a fursona, I'd want to have it depicted in as many different styles as possible. It's like when you get to see an artist draw Daredevil, and then you get to see a totally different artist draw Daredevil, and it's like, whoa, it's the same character, but they both like, they're also so different. They have such a different character to them. Yeah, thanks for being here, Mr. Woods. I'm gonna check out. The chat is saved. I'm gonna check out the artists you recommended. All right, let's do the bonsai tree, and then I think we're good. All right, so the bonsai tree is a big it's a big contrast exercise. So the foliage of the bonsai tree has to pop from this light chair in the ground. The trunk has to pop from the dark table. Because my original instinct was that the bonsai tree trunk had to be dark, like it was like a darker wood color, but it's sitting on top of a 70% gray, so I think it actually has to be, let's try 50. 55. Oh, this is going to be tough, man. We might have to do like a gradient on it, where like it's not one color. It's like a gradient to get it to pop against different. There's a lot of values behind it, so it's going to be hard to get something that makes it pop. Yeah, thanks for stopping by. Yeah, if everybody go join the Discord. If you like hanging out watching the stream, you'll definitely like hanging out in a Discord where there's like-minded people talking comics, talking illustration, writing. Nice. Yeah, I'm glad to be background noise, man. I love streams. I watch streams all the time, and I definitely use them as background noise. I love that I don't have to be like fully present, that I can like fold laundry while watching someone play like some old game that they're speedrunning, and just like can be looking down and folding clothes and not miss something. And when you watch a movie and you're trying to do stuff, you like miss everything important, but when it's a stream you can kind of just like half listen. I'm happy to be that background noise, you know what I mean? I'm still trying to make that movie, but my furry friend moved away, so it'd be more expensive. Yeah, because you don't have you don't have access to like an $8,000 fursuit because the fursuit moved away. You have to now do the normal film production thing of getting sourcing a costume. Oh no, like my production value my production value moved away. That's so funny. Isn't there like a movie called Death to Smoochie that's about like a mascot? Has the furry fandom embraced that film, or do they consider it like non-canon? Isn't it like a dark comedy? I've never seen it. That's a question for everybody. Does the furry fandom consider Death to Smoochie to be like a spiritual part of their scene? Or is it like completely, is it like offensive that I'm actually making that comparison? Is it like not at all? Because it's like a mascot, and like mascot, I'm sure furries are really tired of people comparing them to mascots, right? All right, good night, Fu. Thank you for stopping by. Or Fu Ching. I don't know. I hope I really apologize if I didn't say your name correctly tonight, but thank you for stopping by. I appreciate it. Yeah, this is gonna be so hard. Oh, this bond. If only this was in color, I could just make this tree brown and green and it would pop. Oh, no worries. You joined late. Well, we're going to stop pretty soon, but because I'm to be totally honest with everybody watching, I am like hitting a wall on this tree. This is when black and white I talk about this a lot, but it's actually a really good demonstration of this is a really good demonstration of what I talk about all the time, which is that black and white can often be a lot harder than color. And if you don't believe me, I think this tree is a perfect example. Like I was doing all this amazing stuff where I was like really stoked about like the way the chair was hitting the table, was hitting the wall behind it, was hitting the city scene outside, you know? And then somehow I have to figure out how to get this tree to pop from all of them, even though there's so many different values behind it. And the tree, and what makes it harder, what makes it harder is that the tree trunk and the foliage are different colors, but maybe is the secret that that it should be one shade. And that is what's going to help me. Hang on. Simplifying can often be the tool that helps you. Yeah, individual pieces of bark lighter. Yeah, I mean one way to handle it is you go in with like highlighting and you like do rim lighting. So you get it to pop because you've kind of like shaded out the edges, or like shaded out the middle and put highlighting on the edges. I think that's called rim lighting or edge lighting. So so for sure the way to do this is to not try to I have to get the shape in. So I'm going to work in a shade that's not correct, but a shade that's so light that it pops from everything, so I can see what the hell I'm doing. So I can at least get the shape in. once I get the shape in, I can start to like play with the values on it. Right now, this is just about using a color that pops, so I, as the colorist, can just get it working. All right, let's see. So it might end up being sort of, the other way to do it is that you treat it like her, where, you know, I was talking earlier in the stream about how I just pushed the color on her to just be so unrealistic that it just popped because I wanted that to be a focal point. Maybe that's the way to do the tree too, because it is sort of a focal, like the focal points in this panel are her, the hot sauce bottle, obviously, all the chili guys, and then maybe the tree that they're dancing on. Like, it forms a nice shape, you know what I mean? Like, if I were to create, it's important to consider like eye lines and like where people's eyes are going to travel on the page. So if I were to give you like a rough shape of what somebody's eye should do, it probably is this. Here, check this out. I'll just use a random color so you can see it. Like, that's not a bad shape to get somebody's eye to travel around the page. So you could make the tree pop an unusual amount to try to kind of get everybody's eye traveling in the correct kind of like shape, where they're like looking at the bottle, looking at the chili men, looking at the tree, looking back at the bottle, looking at her, kind of just creating something to focus on. I don't know. Crackster. Oh, it's pronounced Crackster. It's kind of cool. That might be the way to do it, is you push focus onto the tree by, and I mean, I don't hate it. I don't hate it. I actually think that like making the tree lighter might break up all of the grays. Let's just do that for now. This panel's cool though. Like it has a lot of depth to it. And then I can emulate everything that I'm doing on the other two panels. Like now that I kind of understand how it's working, like what's dark and what's light, I can match that exact thing here and then match it up here. It'll work. Let's just finish the tree though before we finish the stream. I also tend to add detail to objects that don't need it. Yeah, I talked about that on a recent stream where like you have to zoom out and like look at the page from really far away and be like, okay, what is actually important? Because otherwise you can get lost in the zoom sauce where you're like here and you're starting to like, all right, I'm just going to shade the highlight on this piece of bark. I'm going to shade the highlight on this piece of bark. And then you zoom out and you're like, oh my God, like I just wasted so much time. So I think the secret with this tree is not to try to put too much detail on the bark, even though it's tempting because Lydia's an art god and drew all the detail on the bark. So I think treating it as more of like a shape versus a bunch of texture in the coloring phase, I think is the secret. Yeah, the zoom, man. It's really dangerous. Like, there's a lot of reasons to not work digitally. I mean, I'm a big digital artist, so don't get me wrong. Like, I'm a digital artist myself. I'm a digital artist supporter. But I do tell people, like, if you want to get better, practice traditionally too. Because it's pretty dangerous. Like, one of the reasons to not work digitally is that your eyes can only look so close at a piece of paper. So if you're drawing on a piece of paper, you kind of have a better understanding of where to put your detail. And even if you don't draw on paper all the time, drawing on paper helps train your brain about like what amount of detail is appropriate where, and the sizing of things, you know? Because if you only work digitally, sometimes you forget that and you like zoom way in. You just waste your time on something, or you like overwork something. Yeah, one thing that people ask me a lot is like, if I'm drawing a comic page and I like open up my drawing program, should I draw a whole page where all the panels are in the same document, or can I draw individual panels and then like cut them out and paste them all into a new document to make my page? Like, people ask me that a lot. And my answer is, do not, I don't know. I'll say this as an I statement, so it doesn't seem like I'm putting rules on art, but I would never do the latter. I personally would never try to draw panels separately and paste them together, because when you're working digitally, you can accidentally change things like your line weight, or work on one panel more zoomed in and put more detail into it by accident. It's so hard. It would be so hard to paste panels together and try to make it look coherent. It's better to just draw. If you're working purely digitally and you're doing your line art digitally as well, it's a much better idea to just treat it like a piece of paper with your whole comic page on it, and you draw out your panels all in the same document. That's like a really common question in the comments. The most common questions are like, how do I letter a character who uses sign language? That's the number one most common question. Second most common question is, what program do you use? And then like maybe like fifth most common question is how do I, if I'm drawing a comic page, can I draw the panels separately and paste them together, or do I have to draw all the panels in the same document? So there you go. If you were wondering that, that's my thought. Yeah, I was born in the late 80s, and I kind of feel like I got an ideal set of skills in making comics, because as I grew up, comics changed how they were made. So first I learned to draw on paper, and I was checking out books from the library in the 90s that were written in the 70s and 80s. So I had books on like how to ink, how to shade with a pencil, like pre-digital era books. But as I grew up, like comics began to color digitally in the late 90s, early 2000s. The internet got bigger, and like more and more people started sharing tips on digital. So it's like I kind of got like the perfect, I think if you were born in the late 80s, early 90s, and you were interested in art, like you kind of got the perfect training, because you sort of were forced to learn the fundamentals offline analog, and then like adapt those techniques to digital, so you have like a better foundation with like art in general. It was kind of like, I don't love a lot of the parts of growing up in the 90s, to be honest, but that part was cool. Sort of catching the weird digital revolution in art as it happened was pretty fun, and I was like very much engaged with it at every step of the way, you know. The first time I ever used Photoshop was like 2001, and I was coloring comics in it by 2002. So it's been like super fun to see it develop and as its own art form. And at first people were coloring comics like way too digital with like way too many gradients and like overworking them. And then like it's been cool to see how, as digital tools have gotten more sophisticated, comic coloring has attempted to return to a simpler, more analog look. It's pretty cool. All right, thanks, Art Victim. Thank you. Thanks for stopping by. I appreciate it. Oh, this tree is going to kill me. How do you... Oh, that's a good question. How do you letter someone yelling very loud in their head? Well, lettering is almost never in a vacuum. Like, it's always going to be with art, right? So the cool thing about somebody's internal monologue or panicking, but it's in their head, is you have the benefit of art, right? So this first panel is technically someone yelling very loud in their head. Because in the story, it's ambiguous, but in the story, she's waking up from a nightmare, and this is what someone in the dream is screaming to her. So this is in her head, right? So this is a way to draw it. But you could take someone extremely calm, like without a screaming expression, like they're neutral, and you could put this lettering without a tail. So it's just a floating bubble with no tail, so it would indicate that it's not coming out of a mouth. It's just like floating over their head. And it has a very different context depending on the expression. Like a neutral expression with this kind of screaming is super unnerving because it means that somebody's panicking but managing to hold it together on the outside. So you have to make a choice about what's happening in your story and what the character is experiencing at that moment, and what tone you're trying to convey. But the simple answer is, if you're keeping lettering inside someone's head, the most basic answer that you can cheat the rules on, but I'll give you the basic rule is don't put a tail on their speech bubble. So it becomes either a narrative box or a floating bubble or a thought bubble. But as soon as you take the tail off of something, it sort of tells the reader, like, this is not being spoken. Like, this is not coming verbally or auditorially out of somebody's mouth. You know what I mean? Yeah, thanks for stopping by, 3 a.m. Turtles. Have a good night. I'm glad you're here. Yeah, you didn't get a tablet until you were 18. I didn't get a tablet until later as well. Once I actually got a tablet and practiced with it, I think I was probably 18 or 19. Because I don't think we could have afforded to buy a Wacom when I was in high school. But when I was using a mouse for a long time, which is so difficult. Like, I don't recommend using like a standard mouse to like color a comic. It's hard. All right, I don't know. That tree, I can't do this tree right now. I'm like so annoyed. At least I kind of have figured out that it might be okay to not be literal with it. I kind of like it as like a brighter shape. Maybe the way to do it is like you put a glow around the chili man that's dancing on it, and you sort of make it feel like that glow is lighting the tree up. I think that's the way to do it. Like you could put, so if I go to this page, see how there's like a pretty significant glow coming off of this hot sauce bottle? Everything in the previous panel is going to have that. So the lighting, there's a lot of light being thrown off of that. And so theoretically this little dancing chili guy is going to be throwing off a glow that could then like give yellow, like colored yellow rim lighting and stuff all over the tree. So it might actually really pop by the time we're done. I might be kind of like throwing in the towel too early because I might actually end up with like a lot of tools to get this to like pop. Oh, and to answer your question, to make text bubbles, and I use Illustrator. I use Here, I'll show you one of my lettering files before we stop the stream. So I use Adobe Illustrator, which is, I think, what most professional letterers use, but it's a vector graphics program. So basically that means that you can just like move pieces around without ever worrying about them pixelating. So you can just like make circles, grab them, copy them. You can make a million copies of stuff. You can grab stuff and you can group it together. So like if I want to take this bubble, which is actually two connected bubbles, Illustrator has a bunch of tools that like merge those into one. So I just press this button right here. It just instantly becomes one shape that sticks together. So it's really good for like stacking shapes and like merging them. And like here, when I was lettering these thought balloons, I just like kept grabbing and copying and copying and copying the same one over and over and over, super fast. And then I just put different text inside each of them. It's pretty cool. I'll do lettering streams. I'll do a bunch of lettering streams when I'm actually lettering. As soon as I'm done coloring the comic, I have to letter the comic. So I'll do a bunch of lettering streams. So if you want to see deep dives into lettering, like just wait like a month or two, and then we'll do it live, and people can ask questions, and we can do a bunch of stuff. All right. My brain is broken. The bonsai tree ended me, but we made pretty good progress. I mean, this panel is cool. The night panel is working. It feels real. It feels like a real comic. It feels like there's depth and consideration. So that's all I wanted to do tonight, was like get it to a good place. Cool, man. We ended the stream with 20 people watching. So, oh, and yeah, there's no stream schedule, honestly. Like I'm so busy with other stuff that I never really know when I can stream. So I'm going to try to start streaming on Sundays, just to give some kind of consistency that people can look forward to. So Sunday afternoon, I'll probably try to stream. But sometimes I just am like, dang, I got 2 hours or 3 hours. Like, let me just fire it up. So stay tuned. I announce it on the Discord. I usually announce it on socials like a couple hours before I go live. So just follow us, join the Discord. You hopefully can catch them. Anyway. Yeah, thanks so much, everybody. I really appreciate everybody being here. This is really fun for me. So until the next one, we're streaming again soon. Don't worry. Join the Discord. Buy our music. Read comics. I love you all. Thank you. Good night. Y'all are great.